the virus is actually causing a relatively mild disease. Oh. And so because of that, we really backed away from closing schools down. Our recommendations for schools and for businesses, colleges, pre-Ks, all those places are really, if you keep sick children and sick teachers out of the school environment, they won't make other people sick, and we can prevent spread of disease. And so our goal really is to encourage people to stay home when they're sick and stay home until they're without fever for at least 24 hours before they return to work or to school.
Now let me ask you, and on that topic, let's say I'm watching the program and you know, I have a scratchy throat, but I'm not a doctor, and I don't know what other symptoms I should be looking for to determine whether or not I should stay home. You know, and you can appreciate this. Right now, the economy is really tough. People want to keep their jobs. They don't want to stay home, especially from work, right? If they don't have to. So what would you say? What are some of the top symptoms, some of the more common symptoms associated with this type of flu that wouldn't, you know, otherwise prevent me from going to work?
The pandemic influenza symptoms are very similar to seasonal influenza symptoms and really can't be distinguished from each other just by symptoms alone. But they are high fever. Actually, it's abrupt onset. So basically, you're feeling pretty well, and all of a sudden, you start feeling really bad. High fever, cough, sore throat, difficulty breathing, runny nose. All those symptoms are associated with both seasonal and also pandemic influenza.
But usually, the fever does set in, correct?
The vast majority of people who get sick with pandemic flu had a fever.
So if you just have a scratchy throat, don't be playing hooky. You really should probably go to work. And but if you come down with a fever, I think that's
fever and respiratory symptoms are good reasons to stay home from work and from school. And when you're at home, and no matter what you're doing, making sure that you're washing your hands and covering your cough so you don't spread it to other people is really important.
You talked about hand hygiene. We tell everyone, please, you know, try to cover your mouth and your nose as you sneeze or cough, but don't use your hand, because you're going to use your hands for other things that you're going to be touching or shaking hands, and then that's how you spread it, correct?
That's right. And actually, little children and school-age kids actually know this better than us adults. We adults are actually the worst offenders. Kids will have learned in preschool and daycare to cough into their sleeves or into their elbows, and so you'll see them doing that routinely. Whereas adults, we've been in the habit of coughing into our hands or sneezing into our hands routinely. But we really have to avoid doing that, because otherwise you cough into your hand, shake hands, touch doorknobs, touch keyboards, and you spread it to other people. And so really being careful about how you cough, and then making sure that you do wash your hands frequently and well are really important things to focus on.
Now, you indicated earlier in our conversation that there, besides the, you know, staying at home, be on the lookout for fever, be making sure that you're practicing the right hygiene, that there is going to be, in addition to all those tips, there will be a vaccine coming online very soon. Could you describe, could you tell us a little bit about the vaccine, when it's going to, how can we get it, and what's going to be the protocol for getting it and whatnot?
Sure. Every year there's a seasonal influenza vaccine that becomes available in many places. In fact, your ward offers flu vaccines to your constituents routinely. The health department always offers those vaccines, and this year we are offering those vaccines, and they're available right now.
But what about the pandemic vaccine?
Right.
Though? When is that going to come online?
Now, the pandemic vaccine is a vaccine that's made in the exact same way as a seasonal flu vaccine, except it has a different virus particle in it, which is the pandemic virus. And that vaccine has been in production since the spring, when we first identified the strain. And the vaccine will be available in the beginning to middle of October. The health department is solely responsible for distribution of this vaccine. So with the seasonal flu vaccine, doctor offices can call the manufacturers or a distributor and order the vaccine. But with the pandemic vaccine, the health department, the state health department for the rest of Illinois, and Chicago's health department for the city of Chicago is responsible for distributing that vaccine to doctor offices, hospitals, retail pharmacies, a variety of other places. In addition to that, the health department will be coordinating some large scale mass immunization clinics where people who don't have a doctor or whose doctors don't have the vaccine can come to get the vaccine.
Very good. And you can also call 311, call your alderman's office to learn more about different sites. And the vaccine, again, I want to stress the vaccine is free.
Yes.
Correct.
The federal government purchased enough vaccine for the U.S. population itself. Some doctor offices will charge for the cost of administering the vaccine or the cost of administration. However, in the public health clinics, the vaccine will be free of charge.
These are the City of Chicago public health clinics.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
If I'm watching the program and I want to take advantage of this service, but I don't know where the local public health clinic is, call 311?
Yes, 311 will have a list of all the clinics located in the city, and we'll be able to share that information with those who are interested in getting the vaccine.
If you don't want to call 311, if you don't want to use the phone, but you love using the computer and the internet, you can also go to www.cityofchicago.org /backslash. I thought they were going to put it up on the screen, but it's not up on the screen. /health. That's www.cityofchicago.org /health. If you want to learn more about the federal efforts on the pandemic flu, you can go to www.cdc.gov. That's www.cdc.gov. Earlier, we were talking about those who are most vulnerable, and you were talking about chronic illnesses, but what about age? Who else should really be looking? I mean, we should all be getting this vaccination. It's free, so there's no cost issue there. But again, let's underscore. Let's,
sure.
You know, is there, if I'm a toddler, should I be getting this?
You know, the CDC actually went through a very rigorous process of evaluating who got sick in the spring with this virus. And what they found was that pregnant women, children 6 months through young adults aged 24 years of age were actually more likely to get sick, and young children were more likely to get hospitalized. So those are all people who should really get the vaccine.
So if you're a toddler, you definitely want to have your toddler vaccinated.
What's
the youngest age, though, doctor? I mean,
6 months.
6 months?
6 months and older can get the vaccine. The other group of people that need to be vaccinated are someone like you and your wife, who are parents of a young infant at home, because the young infant can't receive the vaccine, so you want to make sure that you get the vaccine so you don't bring that virus home to your baby. In addition to that, people who have chronic underlying health conditions like asthma, diabetes, immune problems, neuromuscular disorders, all those people should get the vaccine as well. What's interesting about this virus is that the elderly were really spared. Not that many people over 65 actually got sick. So as a result, they're not recommended to get the vaccine in the beginning phases of this response. As vaccine becomes more available, they can get the vaccine, but we're really hoping to get the higher priority people vaccinated first.
Now, a couple of, you know, I hear this from time to time. Well, you know, I don't want to get the flu shot, Alderman, because then my understanding is it makes you sick first after you get the flu shot. The virus actually makes you sick. Is that true?
It's not true.
Okay.
There's two different forms of the vaccine. Both seasonal and pandemic vaccines come in the shot form or in the nasal spray form. And neither one of those can actually give you the flu. Okay. What happens is a lot of times people get the shot or the nasal spray at a time when there's a lot of other respiratory viruses going along. And so there's a coincidence. People will get the vaccine and then get sick with something else, and they think it's because of the vaccine, but the vaccines cannot make you sick.
And you know, I must confess that I am not a big fan of needles, and that up until really, you know, 3 years ago, when my son was a little guy, he still is a little guy, but he was a real little guy back then. I had never taken a flu shot in my adult life. So, but since taking one, I have not, as I was telling you before, I have not gotten sick. And usually I would come down with something at least once every winter. But since then, knock on wood, I'm okay. And so I'm you know, an example of the fact that, you know, I've seen it, tested it, and I don't.
You're a believer.
And I got to tell you, I'm going to make a plug for Ms. Schoenstad, who is a First Ward resident and a nurse. I had no choice. She made me get that flu shot. In fact, she's like, "Come here, Alderman, you got to get that flu shot." So, but you have a great staff.
Thank you.
For some, and you made reference earlier, you know, in the First Ward we have these vaccinations, but this is done in other communities as well. And so, again, if you're watching the program,